The sulfuric moon of Io shimmered beneath the looming shadow of Jupiter, its toxic skies and volcanic terrain a perfect cover for secrets best kept hidden. Beneath its crust, in the sprawling corridors of Artemis Station, humanity's foothold on this treacherous world, whispers of rebellion began to take root. At the center of it all was Dr. Elara Quinn, a geophysicist whose curiosity often wandered too far for her own good. On this particular evening, long after most of the station had settled into uneasy sleep, Elara sat in the dim glow of her workstation. Her face was illuminated by a screen filled with streams of encrypted data, each line unraveling a conspiracy she hadn't been meant to find. "Sam," she whispered urgently, beckoning her colleague. Sam Voss, the station's communication technician, wasn't one to panic easily, but as he leaned over her shoulder, his face paled. The schematics displayed before them were unmistakable, systems designed to control Io's geothermal vents. The same vents that sustained the colony's energy supply could now be turned into a weapon. It was calculated annihilation. "It's all here," Elara murmured. "Projections, timing, everything. Someone's planning to set off the vents. This could wipe out the entire colony." Sam's voice trembled as he replied, "Who would even have access to something like this?" Elara didn't answer. She didn't need to. The answer was obvious, though it felt dangerous to even think his name. Governor Ryland Graves. The man who had charmed his way into power was also the one with the authority to control these systems. "How do we stop this?" Sam asked, his voice barely audible, as if the walls themselves might betray them. The question wasn't just how, it was whether they could survive trying. "We don't tell anyone, not yet," Elara said. Her tone was resolute, but inside she felt the icy grip of fear. "We use the only safe method we have, codes hidden in the station's routine data transmissions. If anyone intercepts us, it'll just look like routine reports." But Elara wasn't sure who could be trusted. For all she knew, the danger could already be among them. As the station hummed with the steady thrum of geothermal generators, they knew one thing for certain: time was not on their side. It wasn't sabotage they had stumbled upon. In Artemis Station, information was the lifeblood of survival, but when knowledge became a weapon, even the smallest leak could be fatal. Elara and Sam began their silent rebellion the very next day. Their plan was as audacious as it was fragile: transmit encoded warnings to trusted allies within the colony's research teams, all while masking the messages as routine scientific reports. The challenge wasn't just crafting the codes, but ensuring the encrypted data would appear mundane to the prying eyes of the governor's surveillance teams. Every system in Artemis Station was monitored under the guise of operational security, a policy Graves had insisted on. Paranoia often cloaks itself in the language of protection. At her workstation, Elara carefully inserted the first message. It was buried within the results of a harmless geothermal stability report. To anyone else, it looked like an anomaly in the station's heat index, a blip so minor it would be dismissed. But to her intended recipient, Dr. Lenore Maddox, it would scream danger. But would Lenore even see it? And if she did, would she know what to do? Trust, after all, is a dangerous gamble in a place where loyalty can be bought. Meanwhile, Sam worked in the communications hub, rerouting the transmission through redundant circuits to ensure it couldn't be traced back to them. The hub was quiet, its hum broken only by the occasional static of the comm systems. But even in the stillness, he felt eyes on him. When a shadow moved in the corner of his vision, Sam's heart skipped a beat. Turning slowly, he saw a familiar figure, Chief Engineer Corin Pike. Corin wasn't just the station's lead engineer. He was also one of Graves' most trusted lieutenants. "Working late, Voss?" Corin's voice was calm, but the undertone was sharp, probing. Sam forced a smile, tapping at his console. "Routine maintenance. You know how it is. These systems always need tweaking." Corin didn't reply immediately. His gaze lingered on Sam's screen, scanning the streams of data flashing across it. Sam resisted the urge to swallow, keeping his hands steady. Finally, Corin gave a curt nod. "Carry on." As the door slid shut behind him, Sam exhaled slowly. Had Corin seen anything? Or worse, did he already suspect? Back in her lab, Elara's monitor blinked, signaling that the encoded transmission had been sent. She leaned back, tension radiating through her body. The first move had been made, but the game was far from over. Unbeknownst to them, deep within the station's command center, an algorithm flagged the anomaly in the geothermal report. A technician frowned, hesitating before marking it for review. Sometimes, the greatest danger isn't the enemy you see. It's the one that watches without making itself known. In a world of volcanic chaos and political shadows, even silence could betray the boldest plans. Dr. Lenore Maddox was a seasoned biologist, known across Artemis Station for her sharp wit and unwavering pragmatism. But as she reviewed Elara's geothermal report that morning, her confidence wavered. Hidden amidst the ordinary data, a cryptic sequence of numbers caught her eye. Lenore recognized it immediately. Years ago, she and Elara had devised a private coding system during a boring stretch of orbital research. Back then, it was a game to pass the time. Now, it was something far more serious. The code's message was clear: the station is in danger. trust no one. The weight of the warning pressed down on her. The question wasn't what to do, it was how much time they had left. While Lenore began assembling her own team of trusted allies, Governor Ryland Graves held court in the command center. His presence dominated the room, his every move calculated to project authority. A junior technician hesitated before speaking, clearly intimidated. "Sir, there's something unusual in the geothermal reports," the technician said, pointing to a flagged anomaly. "It could be nothing, but could be nothing," Graves interrupted, his voice cold and clipped. He leaned over the console, examining the data himself. To the untrained eye, it was just noise. But to Graves, it hinted at subversion. He'd seen resistance before back on Earth, and he knew the signs. "Run a trace," he ordered, "and tighten monitoring on all outgoing transmissions. If someone's playing games, we'll catch them." Back in the lab, Elara and Sam worked tirelessly, unaware of how close the net was closing. Sam had just intercepted a troubling message from the station's central AI system. A diagnostic sweep of all communications had been ordered. It was only a matter of time before their encryption was flagged. "We're running out of options," Sam said, his voice taut with anxiety. Elara didn't look up from her terminal. "We're not stopping. If we hesitate now, we lose everything." It wasn't bravery that pushed them forward, it was necessity. The stakes weren't just their lives, but the fate of every soul on Io. At that moment, Lenore's voice crackled over their private comm channel. "I got your message," she said, her tone low and urgent. "Meet me at sublevel 3. We're not safe up here." Elara and Sam exchanged a glance. Sublevel 3 was the station's abandoned engineering wing, long deemed unstable after a minor quake had collapsed part of the structure. No one went there unless they had something to hide. As they left their respective stations and moved through the labyrinthine corridors of Artemis, an oppressive silence hung in the air. The rebellion was no longer a whisper, it was a ticking clock. Sublevel 3 was a graveyard of Artemis Station's forgotten ambitions. Dim emergency lights flickered against rusting machinery, and the air carried the faint tang of sulfur. It was the perfect place to meet or disappear. Elara and Sam arrived first, their footsteps echoing ominously in the empty hall. Every creak of the metal floor felt like a warning. Moments later, Lenore emerged from the shadows, her expression grim but determined. "I've brought 2 others," she said quietly, motioning behind her. 2 figures stepped forward. Dr. Jace Kieran, a geologist with access to the station's seismic systems, and Talia Royce, an ex-military engineer who now oversaw station maintenance. Every additional ally was a risk. Trust, after all, could be fatal. "We don't have time for formalities," Lenore said. "What's our next move?" Elara wasted no time. "We've confirmed that Governor Graves has the capability to trigger Io's geothermal vents remotely. The vents are stable for now, but if his systems go active, we're finished. We need to disable them before that happens." Talia frowned. "You're talking about sabotaging the station's core operations. Even if we succeed, the fallout could make this place uninhabitable. Better to risk losing the station than guarantee everyone's death," Elara countered. Her voice held steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight of the choice. As the group debated their next steps, Sam's communicator vibrated. A message from the command center had been intercepted. A trace was underway. Their encrypted transmissions were moments away from exposure. "They're on to us," Sam said, his voice tight. "If we're doing this, it has to be now." The team sprang into action, each member working on their assigned tasks. Talia would disable the geothermal control systems directly, while Jace created a simulated seismic event to mask their sabotage. Elara and Sam would upload a false diagnostic report to buy them more time. The plan was intricate, bold, and fragile. A single misstep could unravel everything. As Talia worked on the control systems, the air in the room seemed to thicken. Her fingers moved deftly across the console, but the strain in her face was clear. Suddenly, the console's screen flashed red, a silent alarm. The system had detected tampering. "We're locked out," Talia hissed. "No, we're not," Elara said, stepping forward. She bypassed the lockout manually, her hands moving faster than Sam thought humanly possible. The screen blinked and the override engaged. But in the command center, Graves wasn't fooled. "We have a breach," he barked. "Send security to sub-level 3 now." The clock was no longer ticking, it was roaring. As the group finished their tasks, they heard the sound of boots clanging on metal. Security forces were closing in. Lenore handed Elara a data drive. "This is everything we found. Proof of what Graves planned. Get it off Io. The rest of us will buy you time." Elara's chest tightened. "Lenore, no arguments," Lenore cut her off. "Go." In moments like this, courage often wears the face of sacrifice. Elara and Sam sprinted through the station's labyrinthine corridors, their path illuminated only by flickering lights. Behind them, the sounds of a struggle erupted, but they didn't look back. They couldn't. By the time they reached the Escape Bay, alarms blared across Artemis Station. Elara input the coordinates for Ganymede, the nearest colony. As the pod's hatch sealed shut, she clutched the data drive, her mind racing with the implications of what they had uncovered. "Will it be enough?" Sam asked quietly. his voice shaking. Elara didn't answer. The pod jettisoned into the void, Io shrinking behind them. The rebellion wasn't over. It had just begun. For now, Artemis Station remained in the grip of its oppressors, but whispers of resistance have a way of growing, even in the harshest of places. On Io, in the silence of rebellion, humanity's hope still flickered.